Hello fellow egoists! In today's video we'll be discussing the possibility of Isagi scoring a hat-trick in the PXG match. The first thing before starting our analysis is to see that the goals in Nell have always had a huge narrative impact and act as answers to characters. This is why, for example, Barrow wasn't able to score his second goal before his revolution, since he was following Snuffy's philosophy, which was directly against the one of Blue Lock. So a goal was impossible to get before this, since the goal would validate Snuffy's philosophy in a high-pressure environment. Similarly, the goals act as answers to characters and their story arcs, which is why players always awaken when they're related to the final goal. Kunigami awakening his hero ego, which showed it is still the right path for him, Yukimiya understanding that he needs to trail his road with his own strength, and Hiyori finding fun in football. This makes it so that not everyone can score a goal, since they need a character arc whose conclusion can be fulfilled through a goal, which severely limits the characters in contention to get a goal. So for Isagi to get a hat-trick, we need to look into the narrative aspect of it all. Does it make sense, and is it a correct conclusion to the storylines that have been given to us? Now to finally get into our analysis. The first thing we need to highlight is that the Nell is at its core an Isagi-centric arc. From the reveal of Kaiser as his new rival to generally the Nell being a perfect place for Isagi to prove his worth as a striker, which was a point hammered into us at the start of the Nell, and that has been coming back in the PXG match with Isagi's aim to become the number 1 striker in the U20 division. For Isagi to become number 1, he'll need to beat both Kaiser and Rin as a striker. So if we go with the idea of Lnsquiz winning and Isagi proving his worth as a striker, then Isagi will need at least a minimum of 2 goals to beat Rin, who could probably only score right now, and Kaiser, who can score at max 1 goal if Isagi aims to beat him. So with this we're set, no? No need for a hat-trick, Isagi can just score twice and outscore both Rin and Kaiser. Well, not really. To understand why, we need to look at Isagi's past performances and the bidding system of the Nell. Isagi's Nell performance has been nothing short of insane, wanting to prove his existence in the Barusha match and gaining 1 assist to prove it, then wanting to make Kaiser his weapon in the Menshine match and devouring Metavision from him to then get 2 insane assists on the match, and lastly in the Ubers match, with him wanting to beat Kaiser and getting 2 goals and 1 assist for it. So now with Isagi's aim to surpass everything from Rin to Kaiser to the Nell, we can look at this progression and see that if Isagi wants to surpass everything, he will also need to surpass his past performances, which leads to the only scenario possible to surpass 2 goals in an assist, a hat-trick. Another thing to add is that if Isagi wants to prove his worth as a striker, he will need to have no assists this game. The only reason why Isagi ever assisted in the Nell has been because he couldn't score on his own and had to leave the finishing job to a quote-unquote better striker in the moment. So for Isagi to assist in the PXG match would mean that even on the stage of the strongest, Isagi is unable to score and needs to pass it to someone else. So the case of Isagi getting 2 goals and an assist can basically be erased. So if Isagi only gets 2 goals, he would be having a performance lower than the one he showed in the Ubers match in terms of acting as a striker but also a playmaker. With this, we see that on a narrative scale, Isagi getting a hat-trick works. It fits with his storyline of becoming number 1 through surpassing both Kaiser and Rin, and his past performances, in what will surely be the best match of his life so far, along with the fact that Barrow and Rin both had to score hat-tricks to get their place of number 1 in block as a showing of their dominance over everyone. But a purely narrative argumentation isn't the only way to think about it. We can also look at the bidding system of the Nell and its inner workings. In chapter 244, we get the Bastard Munchen boys talking about the bidding system and Kurona theorizing that a goal gives you a bid increase varying from 30 million to 50 million. Along with Hiyori saying that an assist got him to 20 million, only for those ideas to be then thrown out the window in the match right after, with Rin scoring a goal but getting a measly 18 million increase bid. So what is up with that? Well, I would argue that Kurona and Hiyori aren't wrong in their assumptions and that the story tries to show that they're right. The problem with Kurona and Hiyori's assumptions is that they're not taking the full context of bids into account. Rin at the time is the undisputed number 1 of Blue Lock, so scoring only 1 goal in a match is underwhelming to say the least, especially if it was a type of goal that he had already shown. So putting only a small increase in Rin's value to keep his bid safe from other clubs isn't wrong, since Rin didn't show more than what he could do before. Similarly, we can look at Barrow's case in the Ubers match, who got only 30 million in his increase as a player. The value that one goal should have if we follow Corona's reasoning. But when we actually look deeper, we can see that Barrow's value could be considered rational. Barrow got 2 goals with one insane goal and 1 goal that was already expected out of him. But the problem is that outside of those 2 goals, Barrow didn't give much to Ubers defensively, with him only starting to press players during the last part of the match. We also have him fumbling multiple opportunities and getting blocked by Isagi 4 times, and most importantly, Barrow didn't make Ubers win the match, even though he decided to usurp the team and take full responsibility for it. So while Barrow's performance was great, we can't deny that when you look at the feats and the facts, this performance was surely more underwhelming than the one he showed in the Porsche match while being unable to win. So him getting a 30 million increase does make sense when bringing everything into context. With this over, we can look at our main point again. If Isagi aims to beat Rin in bids, then he will have to first reach Rin's bid, let alone surpass it. And if we go with the idea of Rin's bid being around 20 million and him potentially getting a super goal, then his bid going even higher, let's say 250 million if it's a super goal we've never seen before for him, then for Isagi to reach this, let alone surpass 250 million, he will first need to show a performance better than his 100 million performance in the Ubers match, which was based on 2 goals and an assist. Secondly, he'll need to score at least 1 super goal, since the upper limit of 3 normal goals should be around 90 million. Though that isn't counting Isagi's different interceptions and blocks, but because this is something that Isagi has been constantly showing, his bid increase might not get that much higher, since the bidders might think that this is something they should expect out of him. And finally, for Isagi to get to his goal of surpassing Kaiser, he'll need to try and aim to surpass Kaiser in bids too. Though getting to 300 million, let alone 320 million from being at 150 million is simply impossible without the maximum of possible goals happening. So with this, we're done with Isagi's story arc and how a hat-trick would be a perfect conclusion for it. So we can move on to the 2 other strikers in Bastard München and their storylines, Kaiser and Kunigami. But before this, I just wanted to talk about a bit of speculation, and if you would rather just go to the part about Kaiser and Kunigami, you can go ahead to this timestamp. For people who have been following the channel for quite a while, you might remember my fear about Isagi going to Real Madrid, and my theory about Kaiser becoming the naked emperor who had everything stolen from him. And now, what is Kaiser's club? Real Madrid. So if Isagi needs to go to Real Madrid, he'll surely need to also steal Kaiser's club bid and his spot from it, making him the true naked emperor who had everything stolen from him. But like we saw, the only way for Isagi to get a bid from Real Madrid would be for Isagi to surpass Kaiser as a striker in the mind of the scouts from Real Madrid. So this part is over with, don't want it to get it too long. Now let's talk about Kaiser's side of the story. Does it make sense for Kaiser to not score at all during the match from the way his storyline has been set up? And I would say to you, yes, absolutely. The same way that Isagi has been on the constantly upward slope, Kaiser has been in a constantly going downward spiral in the nail, showing more and more of his mental weaknesses and insecurities, which had been highlighted by Chris Prince himself in the Menshine match, and that we also see in his backstory through Kaiser's past impossible life. Going from scoring goals by himself in the Porsche match and Menshine match, to then being unable to face off against Lorenzo and needing to feed off the scraps that Isagi created, to then potentially being unable to score a goal by himself. We've seen the cracks in Kaiser's ego and how fragile it is, along with the fact that his mindset has a huge weakness to it. Preaching about doing the impossible and hating on those who dilute their ego because of this limit created, but then doing the exact same thing with Noah. So for Kaiser to truly become aware of all those flaws in him, to see the paradox that he is and the coward that he has become, he'll need to finally have his despair moment, to feel his own weakness and need to gain something from it. Though you could argue that he would rise up too in the same way that Barrow did, but there is a huge difference in what their mentalities were and also what they learned from this. Barrow learned that he needs to fight for the role of protagonist no matter how low he falls, and that he'll need to trail his story with his own strength if he desires to live the way he wants. But for Kaiser, he already knows that. The problem seems to come from much deeper, tracking back into his past life and insecurities that might be set from as early as his childhood from the way it seems he has been characterized. So him rising back up immediately, the same way that it was for Barrow, seems impossible from what we've seen, especially since this would have already happened in the Ubers match if Kaiser had that strength in him, but he instead decided to flee from his challenges and aim to just steal the chances created by others. So for Kaiser to not score, fail horribly and then be forced to try and make a comeback in the U20 World Cup with this time his backstory in hand being finally shown to us would be a way of doing this. And finally, we can head on to our wild card and the only one who I could see stopping Isagi from getting a hat-trick, Kunigami, the wild card. For Kunigami, so far his storyline hasn't even been traced too much for us to see. We do see that he's between two paths. First his hero ego, which has been shown to still work thanks to his goal in the Barsha match, and the wildcard path, which seems to be about denying one's ego and to play surely and only by rationality and through Noah's physical stats. And as said before, goals are answers to storylines we get traced over the duration of the match. But for Kunigami, so far there has been nothing except for him desiring to beat someone, from what we know of Ego Jinpachi's speech about hunger, and also a bit of attention thanks to Ego Jinpachi telling him to be egoless. So for Kunigami to get a full answer in this match through the form of a goal seems a bit too far-fetched currently. In this sense, he truly is a wildcard whose storyline is so hidden from us that we can't know what he will do in this match, and honestly, to know what exactly is going on with his character is a bit too hard to have a concrete idea of what he'll do even for me. So to summarize a bit, we see that a hat-trick for Isagi would be the perfect way for him to finalize his arc in the Nell, showing his dominance over everyone but also finish the storyline of Kaiser, who has been a constantly downward spiral since the beginning of it, and Kunigami's storyline, which seems to be about being the catalyst of the best striker in the world. And with this, the video is finally over. One question that could be asked is, does Isagi have the abilities to score a hat-trick? And the answer to that is in my latest video, which I highly recommend you check out. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed the video and have a great one, fellow egoists.